Welcome to the St. Patrick's Confessio HyperText Stack, an online resource for investigating the saint's own writings. Designed to be of interest to the general public as well as to academic researchers, the stack includes such features as digital images of the medieval manuscripts involved, a specially commissioned historical reconstruction that evocatively describes life in pre-Viking Ireland, audio presentations, and some 10,000 internal and external digital links that make it truly a resource to be explored. The stack provides free access to a piece of heritage that can be claimed by the most diverse components of Irish society. The purpose of this video is to show you, the user, how best to let the stack cast light on the aspect of that heritage that interests you. While I've been welcoming you, we've had this, the home page, on view. We trust you find it effective. We're beginning from the fact that many of our internet visitors worldwide, and even in Ireland, may well not have realized that St. Patrick wrote 2 books whose texts actually survive. By showing the opening paragraph of the Confessio in this way, we hope that they will be led into wishing to read on, as perhaps you have been just now. To be realistic, most people will probably want to do this in English, and for that purpose we've captured this excellent translation. But there's no reason why the English language should have a monopoly, so alternative translations for reading on in St. Patrick's own words are provided in Irish, in Italian, in Portuguese, in German, and will shortly appear in French. A specially commissioned article on St. Patrick's writings sets them in the context of Patrick's probable background in 5th century Roman Britain. One of the conditions for digital projects like this, funded, as we are happy to acknowledge, under the Irish Government's Programme for Research in Third-Level Institutions, was that they should contain a strong element of outreach to the interested, non-specialist community. So far we have talked about how the stack makes easily available St. Patrick's writings in accessible, modern language translations, and we think that, magnetic personality as he is, that outreach is certainly inherent in Patrick's works, and will come through strongly. But another condition is that such projects should be educational. In our general English language introduction about the HyperStack, we say how we think the stack fulfills the mandate. As you read the saint's own writings, you may be puzzled to find no references to shamrocks as an emblem of the Trinity, no mention of banishing snakes from Ireland, no contests with druids or spectacular miracles, no reference to anywhere called Armagh, not even a mention of Slemish as the place where Patrick herded animals in slavery. In short, a frequently asked question might be, why does what I am now reading seem different from what I think I know about Patrick? Well, such ingredients are indeed an important part of the popularly held image of the man, but the point is that these elements, and many others, only came to be attributed to the figure of Patrick in later times, beginning in the Middle Ages. This development is itself an interesting phenomenon, which can often be tracked in some detail, so the stack also explains how and why it was that the 2 brief but engaging texts by the historical evangelist were subsequently extrapolated so as to project the better-known figure of hagiography and folklore. For example, in a layer of the stack called Special Features, we trace how and why the 7th century authors Murchu and Tíreachán were responsible for building up a figure of the saint that has actually eclipsed people's view of the real man ever since. In another layer, we explore in more detail Tíreachán's method of doing this, while in actually the most substantial of its commissioned contributions, titled Seeking Patrick, the stack offers a highly descriptive reconstruction of the circumstances in which Murchu, ecclesiastic though he was, may have produced the magical, druid-infested account that he did. This is illustrated with a map, while the stack also offers an audio version of the book, freely available to download from the same section. There one will also find, in their original Latin and in English translation, the 7th century works we've just been talking about, first written 200 years after St. Patrick's own time. On none of the screenfuls we've displayed so far will you yet have seen any visual images of St. Patrick. That's deliberate, to portray him in any particular garb and in any particular surroundings, is to beg any number of historical and ecclesiological questions about him. But again, this difficulty is itself a point of interest, so the stack offers an illustrated account of St. Patrick in art under the title The Staff, the Snake, and the Shamrock. That's where those elements come in. Apart from that last item, so far we have been rather text-heavy and image-light. That all changes, though, when we consider where our evidence for anything to do with St. Patrick ultimately comes from: medieval manuscripts. The Confessio survives, in whole or in part, in 8 such manuscripts, dating from the 9th century onwards. A pride and privilege of the Hypertext Stack project is that we have been kindly allowed by the relevant libraries to offer high-quality digital images of each of these. We're particularly grateful for the permission we received to capture for the first time the patrician parts of the oldest witness of all, the famous Book of Armagh. Here are the initial passages of the Confessio from it. As you see, one can zoom in and swim around in it, and see there the opening words Ego Patricius. This is the hand of the scribe Ferðófnach, and the Book of Armagh is actually one of the easier of the manuscripts to read. All the same, though, a little help with the handwriting may be welcome, so we've also captured images of several historic printed editions of the text, including a wonderful diplomatic transcription of the Book of Armagh, published in only 400 copies in 1913 in a form that, as you see, tries to mimic in print the varying sizes of the letters in the original. You may notice that we have used the first 2 words of this for the stack logo. These images are all of attractive artifacts, I think you'll agree. The stack is the only place you will see them all together, and indeed the only place that many of them are available at all. But so far we've left out the role they really play. This is where the stack fulfills a third, academically more important requirement of the funding, namely to constitute a significant contribution to frontline scholarly research. How does it do that? Largely by being built around something not mentioned so far, namely Ludwig Bieler's canonical edition of the original Latin of the works of St. Patrick. Bieler's edition constitutes the central pillar of the stack, the lift shaft, if you like, connecting the different layers, and many relevant external sites, by means of some 10,000 hypertext links. Here is the first of the 62 chapters, and here, on the left, are the apparatuses or scholarly underpinnings of the edition that Bieler produced. Each of these can be opened up and closed down. Working up the list of apparatuses, we have the editor's scholarly commentary, the Apparatus Biblicus, which identifies scripture passages quoted by St. Patrick, the Apparatus Fontium, which identifies sources referred to, and the so-called Apparatus Criticus, which lists variant readings. The point with the Apparatus Criticus is that, as usual with medieval texts, not all the manuscripts of the Confessio show exactly the same spellings, wordings, or even passages. So the difficult part of the work of a medieval philologist is not, as people tend to imagine, deciphering the squiggly writing, but rather, by triangulation back from all the different witnesses, trying to work out how the original non-surviving 5th century exemplar read as it came direct from the author's hand. Look at the place where St. Patrick refers to his father. You'll see that Bieler reckons the form of the name that he originally wrote, here, in the accusative case, was Calpornium. But look at the evidence for this. If we open the Apparatus Criticus, we see that Bieler arrived at his conclusion by triangulating back from quite a variety of spellings actually found in the manuscripts, and identifying, as it were, the common denominators. Thus he tells us that the spelling is Calpornium with a U in manuscripts R and F, whereas in the Book of Armagh, as identified by the conventional siglum D, it is Calpornum without a letter I after the N. That much you will find printed in the 1993 book, but in the stack these sigla have been made into live hyperlinks that bring you direct to the image of the appropriate part of the appropriate manuscript. In the Book of Armagh, for example, there's Calpurnum, without the letter I. A technical description of this exercise in detailed digital hyperlinking, electronic embroidery one might almost call it, will be found in the About section of the website. But, like all digital publications, the Confessio HyperStack is to some degree a work in progress. Thus it includes a very large annotated bibliography drawn from centuries of scholarship on St. Patrick, with more than 1,000 entries and external links to publications. But as yet it constitutes only a beta or trial version of what we hope will ultimately be a fine publication. And dear listeners, here is where you come in. Please send us feedback by way of additions or corrections. The contact details are displayed on the site, and we'll be very grateful for any help received. In the meantime, we hope you find your sharing our experience of St. Patrick as having a personality with an inherently attractive and inspiring quality to it. When the stack was officially launched in Dublin on the 14th of September 2011, the centrepiece of the occasion was a live reading in English of part of the Confessio. Apart from the full written text, the stack also includes the abridged version of it arranged and presented as an audio dialogue. As we close this introduction, and before you proceed to explore the stack for yourself, please join us in listening now to the opening paragraphs of the Testimony of St. Patrick in his own words.
Ego patricius peccator, rustiциssimus et minimus omnium fidelium, et contemptibilissimus apud plurimus, patrem habui.
My name is Patrick. I am a sinner, a simple country person, and the least of all believers. I am looked down upon by many.